We are live. Okay, we are live. Senate Finance. This is April 2nd. And we are going to continue our discussion of 527, an act relating to extending the sunset of 30 VSA 248A. And first on the agenda is Hunter Thompson of Telecommunications. Thank you. After that.
Use their speaker and the mic.
Yeah, the speakers all off. Okay. Wait a minute.
All right, thank you. For the record, I'm Hunter Thompson. I'm the Director of Telecommunications and Connectivity with the Public Service Department. So it's my understanding here that I am testifying on the renewal of 248A, the House version of the bill. So first I'll give you the department's position on the renewal. We prefer the version that was introduced here with removal of the sunset date. That's not an option. We prefer more than the 4 years in the House version. 10 would be great, 7 would be good. 4 is 4. If that's not an option, finally, we accept the House version. I think some other folks might have stuff to say about the study, seeing as we just did one 3 years ago. But despite any of the other conditions, the department fully supports and would like to see the renewal of 248A as a statute that is used for telecommunication power siting. I've got some other stuff to go here, kind of related to some other things that I've heard. So, as I said, we did this study 3 years ago. We traveled all over the state. We went to Brattleboro, Washington, Randolph, St. Albans, Montpelier, St. Johnsbury. We reached out to the utilities. We reached out to the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. We reached out to the public. We reached out to everybody who would possibly listen to us. And we had a few key takeaways from that I would be happy to share. So as far as the public themes went, one of the themes was notice, access, and transparency about how the petitions are filed and expanded outreach on the web. The other one was how comments on cases are entered and remote participation options. I'd like to point out remote participation options exist, like they're when these meetings happen, there is the remote participation option. And then the other big one that we consistently heard was health and safety and articulation. And I'd like to point out that we are federally preempted from discussing that 248A.
That has been an ongoing frustration. I know with the
Can you repeat what is that? I'm sorry.
health and safety.
RF radiation, health and safety, the public had a lot of input on RF radiation. And the department and the state are specifically preempted by the FCC from discussing health and regulation.
It's like nuclear power.
Right.
You couldn't take testimony on safety,
Really?
really.
Oh.
That's the,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
This is the FCC. Nuclear power is the Federal Atomic Energy Commission. So we are preempted.
So the municipal themes that we heard when we did this study were desire for clarity on the process, largely through communication with the regional planning commissions on how they get how municipalities get substantial deference in the 248A process. That was one of the biggest things we heard, and that was a big piece of pushback from the towns is how do we interface with the RPCs to make sure.
I think we heard the same testimony a year, 2 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
At least we're consistent. And the utility themes were the utilities are in favor of it, the siters are in favor of it, and quite honestly, as I said, the department is in favor of it. I want to point out just some numbers to give a scope, because oftentimes when we talk about tower siting, we only hear about the outliers.
Well, I know there's a couple outliers that have gotten a lot of publicity, but I was gonna ask you, how many sightings are we doing?
So for 2025, and this year is a bit bigger because every time the statute comes in for renewal, we see a cyclical push. So we did 174 in 2025. We did 72 in 2024. Of those, though, the important thing to keep in mind is that the bulk of those are not actually new towers. The bulk of those are small de minimis applications with providers switching out antennas and other pieces of infrastructure that don't actually affect the view shed. They don't affect anything other than the service the provider is being able to push out through their antenna. They might have more ports, they might have more watts, but it's just the
Do you know how
quality of
many
service.
youth towers were included?
I do.
Okay, represent.
So, for 2025, there were 7 petitions for a limited size and scope, which is either co-location or modification, which means the tower might have an extra panel put on it or be extended up to 10 feet higher. And there was 19 petitions for new towers. In 2024, those numbers were down to 15 for potential expansions of existing towers and only 9 new towers, just
9 towers.
9 towers, yep. So if you do the math, in 2024, 70% of the petitions were basically for antenna swaps, and in 2025, 85% of the petitions were for that de minimis modification. That's basically an antenna swap or other piece of hardware.
No one,
24 was 9 new, and what was the other, the sort of,
9 new and 15
Okay.
for a co-location or modification to an existing tower. So one of the things I heard when this was introduced last week was that maybe we're done with the deployment of towers. And I'd really like to reiterate, both as a citizen who lives 5 miles from here, who does not have cell service at my house, and some actual scientific data to back that up. We're not there yet. We did a project within the department 2024-2025, where we drove over 7,000 miles of road in the state of Vermont. And the success rate for the call completion was at a max 80%. So there's still 20% of that 7,000 miles of road. You just can't make a phone call. You can't call 911. Your GPS may or may not do any of that stuff. That's for a 75% success rate. When you actually go to consistently be able to make a call every time, that drops down to the highest success rate of 77%. So 23% of the roads that we drove in that test just can't make a call. You're in a dead zone.
when was that again? That,
2024, 2025, we did a project called the Mobile Eye Test.
yeah, no, I remember you doing it. I just couldn't
Yeah.
remember when it was.
So the reason why this service is important, as we all know, is cell service most directly impacts at-risk populations, right? You look at the Pew Research Center, and the at-risk populations have a larger dependence on smartphone and the internet access. 16% of US adults are completely reliant on their smartphone to get on the internet. We saw this become a big issue when the digital was exposed in bright glaring lights when people were sent home for COVID. We saw people parked at the library where their kids could do their homework. We have an age dependence metric where 17% of the population that's 65 or over is dependent on a smartphone for internet access. 27% of the population between 18 and 29, which are the young people we're trying to attract to Vermont, only have their smartphones ready. That's again highlighted again with education, high school education, or less 25% of that population in 2025 was dependent on their smartphone to get internet access. So when we get to the point where internet access and smartphone connectivity is not universal, we're disenfranchising these populations, and they're the populations that most need the assistance of the state. And more income dependence, 34% of households making under $30,000 a year are dependent on their smartphone to get on the internet. One of the other things I would like to point out is this is not the situation you were in. One of the things I often hear said is Patrick Lake equal. We don't want Vermont turned into a giant pincushion with 200-foot towers sticking out of every mountain and valley. Patrick Lake said this in 1998. The landscape is wildly different than it was in 1998. If you want unemployment insurance, you need an internet connection to file really quickly. If you want SNAP benefits or regional benefits, you need an internet connection to go to AHS to apply. If you want to do basic service, if you don't want to wait 2 hours at the DMV, you need to make an appointment. You need an internet connection to make the appointment. The number of services that the government uses to push out these at-risk populations is ever increasing and are reliant on internet connectivity to be able to serve these people. That's largely my testimony. Is there any questions? Let's skip
Well,
over some.
it sounds like when you reach your public hearings, you heard many of the same things that my emails heard 2 years ago and have been hearing recently when this bill, became active. So there seems to be concern that the towns don't know, especially your smaller towns where you've got a couple of volunteer select board members and maybe not, and maybe a town clerk. Many of them don't even have a part-time manager of any kind. How do these, what's been done to help the towns understand and likewise the citizens understand how they access the system? Because this system was put in place in lieu of a full-blown Act 250 hearing, right? Citing hearing, years perhaps to get through, and it was done at a time when we were just starting to see cell phones, wireless, become important. We've got a bill in here that's talking about switching over from copper to fiber and the importance of people knowing about batteries because that's your connection to 911. And if you don't have, and I don't think we ever promised when we did 911 that everyone would have 24/7 immediate access, but that's become the expectation. And the towers are part of that expectation. Having been stuck out to my waist in snow with my cell phone in my hand, but no cell service. I know that feeling of I could be in real trouble because there's no one else around and I can't contact anyone. And so the expectations have changed. We expect the ability to connect, but we also expect to be able to have a voice in that process where the cell phones. And I understand some providers or people that put up cell phones may be more cooperative than others. So I'm wondering, what has the department done to help make it clearer to both the towns? Where can I go on the internet and have it laid out? I like A, B, C, D. This is what you do. And, these are the where you get the papers and this is what you have to file, or this is who you call.
So I'm going to defer to Mr. Faber on
Okay.
process, but with that said, it's my understanding that the PUC and I know for a fact that the PSD has a public guide for the Act 248A process available on our website, which explains the different petition types, as well as how the towns or how interveners can be involved in that, in those
Okay.
petitions. Excuse me, when we're contacted by the towns can always reach out to us and request a public hearing, and we ensure that happens. We've had situations where we were reached out to by the town select board, and they said they were not happy with the responses they were getting from the current slate of people at the provider working on a petition. We reached out to the provider, out to the provider's lobbyist, and we said, let's work this out. Let's get some new lawyers in there. Let's get some new people, set up another public hearing, go back to the town, explain what this is about and how this is working. And they did. So we're able to exert that kind of authority for the town. We also can insist on aesthetics tests. So if a town comes and says, we think the tower is gonna cause undue adverse aesthetics impacts, we will get a vendor, they will come out, they'll do the aesthetics assessment, and that will be included in the petition as part of
Okay.
the consideration.
How did the towns know they call the Public Service Department? It's not obvious by your name. The Public Utility Commission is more obvious, utilities in their name. Is,
That part, I'm not sure how to answer.
okay, maybe we should ask Lee. I mean, because that's the first step, is to know that it's your website they should go to, and it's you that they should go to. Okay, I had Senator Hardy and then Senator Brown.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Along those same lines. Is there a timeline after which if towns contact you, you're just like, well, that's too far in the process, you are too late? Because the PUC's process is a very ordered kind of legal process. And so I would assume there's a point after which it's kind of a done deal.
I'm gonna defer to Mr. Faber, I'm sure he uses timelines off the top of his head better than I do, I have to go through.
Okay, well, he's getting a good
30 days, 60 days, 90 days.
And then, are you gonna submit your written testimony? Because you,
It's a chicken scratch.
okay, it might be helpful because you had a lot of stats in there. You can write it up to submit it.
Sure.
And then I'm wondering, I mean, one of the things that we're hearing from some people is that, the 248A process, that they would prefer to have that 250 process, which is kind of funny. I'm wondering if that is that's a different type of process, but there's still a process. And why is it that you think that 248A process is better?
I am grateful I'm not extremely well versed in the Act 250 process. Right? But I will say that the Act 250 process and the 248A process are both processes that can be gone through the site, these antennas and these cell towers, but they're separate processes. When we get a 248A petition, we do an in-depth technical review of the site plan, of the co-location, of the RF propagation maps to ensure that they actually fit in with what not only the petitioner submitted, but with the appropriate type of project they're petitioning for, and then that's the size and scope. It's my understanding that Act 250 doesn't do that much of a deep dive technical analysis on the actual petition, and that Act 250 is more of an environmental petition, or like the way of saying that.
Land use.
I think that the department does a good job looking at the various people who intervene in these types of petitions when they intervene. I think there were a couple of instances on there where we had a petition and we pushed back on the carrier and said, this is not okay. This is kind of ridiculous. They got upset and we argued for a bit, and then we said we could potentially support this. So they updated their petition that automatically now 60 feet off the tower. We submitted it, and then the town pushed back, and the town said that's not what we understand. We will not, in order to get substantial difference, we're going to say we don't approve of this tower unless you meet these guidelines. And the petitioner said, okay, and we were able to look and come to the petitioner and do some analysis to ensure that the obligation laws would still get the service they wanted, and the petitioner bumped it down, and the town finally said, okay, we're okay with this petition, we're okay with this tower. That one is still churning because the landowner will be able to see the tower from their land is pushing back and saying we don't want it there. This is something I've said before, and I'll say it again. I don't know if I've ever said it publicly, but everybody is in favor of throwing one person in the volcano if it means the greater good. Everybody is looking for everybody realizes that sacrifices must be made for the greater good. In this case, the sacrifice was getting cell phone service in a town where it currently didn't exist. Nobody ever thinks they're the one that is going to get thrown in the volcano, or they're the one that's going to have to make the sacrifice. I feel that a fair amount of pushback on these 248 petitions are from the folks who realize, I'm the one that's now gonna have to make the sacrifice, and nobody wants to see that, nobody wants to look out the window and see a cell phone tower, but if looking out the window and seeing a cell phone tower means that a town of 1,000 or 2,000 people now is able to dial 911, then it's unfortunate, we apologize, that sometimes sacrifices need to be made.
Senator Brock.
When we talk about internet connectivity and service generally, you obviously keep records of points that come to the public service department.
Do you want me to
What do you-
switch to that page?
Sure, what are you hearing? And what quantities are you hearing?
So, I didn't know that. The quantity is not unusual, given what we do. And the primary concerns. You guys have more kind of. Primary complaints around billing and disconnections and connectivity and connections. Yeah, oh, here we go, 2024 complaints. We had 83 complaints, of those 30 were related to billing, 27 were related to business practice. And 17 were related to the delivery of service, so if there's any, it's like, a tree came down, my service was out.
There's thousands of customers that provide, that seems like a very low number.
2025, we had 122 complaints. Of those, 43 were related to billing, 27.
I mean, I bet that's a number of people complaining about the service of our legacy provider just in my town.
I think that number.
And so what it suggests to me is based on that is that people are complaining among themselves, but they aren't complaining to you. So the question is, do you seek complaints? Is complaining easy? If people are having problems with service providers, do they know to contact you? Do you do anything to outreach as far as the public is concerned to make them aware of the fact that you're the place that people ought to complain to?
The Consumer Assistance and Public Information Division, there's all the complaints. I will say that they are easy to submit. They need to be submitted online or via a telephone number. You can call up, people reach out to me directly. In terms of how people know to complain to us, that I'm not sure. I've never considered it.
But when you consider such a very low number of complaints, given the volume of service that's out there being provided, that to me is a strong signal. When you have internet providers who sell products and they say that for a different tier of service, you can pay an additional amount of money. And they never say that you will then get 300, 500,000. They say up to. And they never provide up to. Have you noticed that?
I personally, yeah, that's not how public networks are designed to be, the up-to speed. I believe, maybe last session there was a proposal actually for public networks to be able to have the infrastructure to deliver the maximum adequate speed to every one of their consumers simultaneously. And that technology just doesn't make sense. That's not what
Almost the question might be, are they able to deliver that service tier to any of their customers? I've never met a customer who got the tier of service that I've been paying for and others in my area. Never. I would have thought that that would be one of their top complaints. Do you have any way of measuring what's actually being delivered and whether or not it is meeting what people are selling?
Are we talking about wired internet service? Sure. Or cellular service, but wired internet.
Well, I'm talking about cellular service.
I don't think the speed tiers on cellular service are necessarily advertised or sold like that, but yeah, we measure the upload download speed at that same 7,100 miles of roadway that we drove.
And do you do that regularly, or is that the one
Couple of years.
every couple of years? And do you make public what you find?
Absolutely.
Where would a consumer find that and know to look?
It's front and center on our website. We've done press releases on it. We got links to it.
Well, suppose you found a provider who was consistently saying, I'm delivering this quality of service, and if you go around, you don't find it. What do you do about that?
As I said, as far as the upload and download speed, I don't think there's any quality of service guarantees that the cellular providers are giving to folks.
But when they sell something that's supposed to be up to a certain level of service, don't you think there's a commitment there that ought to be looked at? Particularly if it's not being delivered at all?
I don't think the cellular service providers advertise any given speed, and they say up to in the event of, if it was just me in this room, I would be able to get a certain amount of bandwidth. I don't think I'll have if the room is full if we all go on there at the same time.
I think that's yeah, I think it's more internet that advertises speed levels. Up and down, but not,
Not so, there's not.
yeah,
In my experience, that's a wired internet.
yeah,
So, okay.
Thank you.
okay. Any other questions, Mr. Thompson? Thank you.
Thank you.
If it's all right, if I see no objections, I think it might work better to put Greg on next. Then we'll have the two regulators and then we can go to more public comment. That works for you. Okay. Not seeing anyone jump up in three, so let's do that.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Greg Faber with the PUC. So ostensibly, I'm here to testify on S-257, or S-527, or H-527, I'm sorry. Would you like me to do that or do an overview of 248A? I'm hearing a lot of questions, maybe that
Let's
would
do,
be
can
helpful.
you do a quick overview of 248A, just to refresh everyone's memory, how it works? And perhaps the different roles, what your role is, what the department's role is. So we have the landscape, so we can plug in then when individuals.
Right, okay. So in general, 248A was created back in 2007 to allow for statewide level review of the siting of telecommunications facilities, wireless telecommunications facilities. It sets forth requirements for the applications and allows us, the PUC, to develop rules or orders governing the process. Prior to 248A, all facilities needed to go through Act 250 and the town to get approval. Section 248A is optional, meaning that today you could still, as a provider, go through the town and or Act 250 to get approval for your project rather than use the 248A process. In my experience and based on the testimony I've heard from various providers, most providers use the 248A process, but not all. 248A is basically divided into three categories. Small projects, or de minimis modifications as they're called in the statute, typically consist of swapping out antennas on an existing tower, or maybe putting antennas in a church steeple, something like that, very small projects. There's medium or limited size and scope projects, which can entail the construction of a small facility with a tower up to 140 feet high, and limited earth disturbance. Typically, limited size and scope is used for expanding existing compounds, or putting more than de minimis antennas on an existing tower. But you can actually build a new tower under the limited size and scope category. And then above that are some larger projects, everything else, those involve constructing a new tower taller than 140 feet. So that would be putting in, usually an access road, 50 by 50 compound, the tower, equipment, all that sort of stuff. So there's notice provisions. So as I mentioned before, we developed a what we call standards and procedures for 248A. They're basically the rules of the road for 248A applications. And these rules require for medium and large projects, applicants must provide 60 days advance notice of the application to the town, the regional planning commission, the adjoining landowners, state agencies, including A&R, historic preservation, and the Department of Public Service, of course. So that's the advance notice period. So it's a minimum of 60 days. And I know, Senator Hardy, you had asked about
Yeah,
when the towns get notice. So that's their initial notice, right?
mhm,
So once that occurs, the provider has to wait a minimum of 60 days, and then they can actually file their application, the formal application. So
Okay.
again, that goes to the same parties notified in advance. And with that, so they submit that to us first. We do a completeness review of that project. And once it's found to be complete, we'll issue a notice to all the parties saying, okay, this project's been filed, or this application's been filed. You have 30 days to submit any and all comments, motions, everything on that project. So that begins the formal comment period. Now, prior to that, towns can request that the department conduct a public hearing in the town. They can conduct their own public hearings. And that generally,
so can I just ask a little bit more about that? So there's 60 days advance notice.
Mhm.
So during that 60 days is when a town has to ask you to do a public hearing?
they have to ask the department to do it within that 60 days
Okay,
period.
the department.
They of course can do it after that.
Wait, you're the
We're the
commission?
PUC.
Okay,
Right.
sorry,
DPM.
Mr. Thompson works.
was
with
the
it.
department.
Yes.
Okay, so they have to ask the department for a hearing
They don't have to,
if they want one.
if they,
What if they miss that 60-day window? What
they
if,
could still ask, and they can still hold their own public hearings, of course. There's no restriction on the town holding a public hearing when,
and if
what
the
if-
town holds a public hearing, does it matter to you guys?
does it matter?
I mean, like,
Oh,
if they
it's for
decide,
the-
if they have a public hearing and they're like, no, we don't like that, the site where the proposed place
Right.
is, and they tell you,
Then they would file comments within that
Okay.
30-day period saying, we don't like this.
okay, during the 30-day period.
After the
After
advance
the-
notice, right?
And what if they miss that 30-day window? Is that it? Are they done? They can't do anything?
Well, yeah, that is the common period, that's that working statute.
Okay. And
Can they
30
after-
days
they could
start
after-
after you guys have gotten the application and
You deem it
you
complete,
deemed it complete.
yeah,
Okay, and the 60 days is before that.
a minimum.
So a minimum of 60 days,
Yeah.
so they could give you a 60-day notice, and then it could take them a little while to get their act together and get their application complete. So there's a little bit of wiggle room on the front end, but the 30 days is really tight.
Right, that's the statutory deadline,
Statutes can be changed though.
yes.
By
of course,
us,
Of
right?
course, yeah, yeah, and our deadline matches.
Check it.
Yeah, of course, there are a lot of deadlines in statute.
Yeah, no, I know there's a lot of deadlines. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out the process and where it's being.
That's the time right now.
Okay, and after that 30 days, if a town hasn't spoken up, then they're not in the process anymore.
That's right.
Okay,
However, people in the town and the other agencies
Individual
could
landowner?
have filed.
okay. So these deadlines are true not only for municipalities, but
It's for
also
everybody.
for,
All the adjoining
People-
landowners who are getting notice, non-adjoining landowners could choose to participate in the process.
is there, we went over this ad nauseum about like the people who can petition for Act 250. Remember this? I'm looking at Senator Beck because he and I are on the same committee, but is there a like definition for who is allowed to?
Well, you'd have to file a motion to intervene. And
But
you'd
is there a
have to state
definition
your-
of who is allowed to be an intervener?
Yes, there is a legal definition. There are
Specific to 248A
Well, there's rules regarding motions to intervene in general.
in general for PUC.
Yeah, it's for all legal proceedings.
No, I know that, but they're different. The one for Act 240.
This would be Vermont
is
Rules of
different.
Civil Procedure, so
Okay, so it's based on the rules of civil procedure. There's not a specific,
there's nothing special about our motion center or any of that.
okay. Okay,
We do have a form though that people can fill out, so it makes it a little bit easier.
you have a special form
Well, it's
for
not special.
non-special interviewers.
It explains what you need to file, and it's
Okay.
easier for folks, as opposed to actually writing on the motion, you know, for pro se litigants. it's-
Okay, so you do have some things that make it easier for pro se.
We try, you know.
Okay. All right.
Senator Chin.
Picking up on that thread, is it very clear? I've heard advocates tell me that the form you just referred to, that it could be clear as to how communities, select boards can weigh in, because what I think I've heard you say before, Gregory, here before us, is that you do give a lot of deference to local municipalities and their leaders, so that their comments are held heavier. Do you think it's as clear as it possibly is possible for municipalities and how they should weigh in, being a formal resolution by the governing legislative entity, the select board, or just the chair do it, or does the town manager do it? And do you think on the form it's also clear, and as best it could be, how a municipality can offer their feedback as opposed to a member of the public?
Okay, so for towns, they don't even have to file a motion to intervene. All they have to do is file a notice of intervention, just file a letter.
And they know this is, you feel comfortable that that's clear to all the different
I
levels?
believe so. You should hear from the VLCT.
Okay.
They support this process, so I believe it's clear. I certainly get many of them. But once a town files a notice of intervention, they are a party to the case. They actually have to file a motion. They just file a notice, hey, I want to be a part, and they are.
And when you say they, that's the chair can just send a letter,
The planning commission, the select board, both.
anything with a formal signature profile.
That's right. Either the select board or the planning commission or both, yeah.
I'd love to hear from VLCT if that's possible.
They're on the list.
And then not related to that line of questioning, do you have any comment on, from your vantage point, as you've looked to see how other states do siting of these telecommunications towers, are we out of step? Is this common? Is that there's usually, I don't even like to call this fast pass, but a technical path? Is this a common approach that you see in the other 49 states?
I don't know about all the states, but many states do it on a town by town basis.
Oh.
Many states do that because they have large cities.
They have counties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
In case nobody's heard me say that before.
Yeah.
it's a little different.
Good luck with that. Okay.
Oh,
Floor
yes.
is yours.
Yeah, that's still going here. Okay, so we got past the advance notice. Okay, so the standards, the standards and procedure that PUC has, for a non-dimensional project, I mean, basically the larger ones, we require applicants to provide information on existing permits, detailed project descriptions, site plans, elevation drawings, signal coverage maps, and consistency with all applicable environmental and aesthetic criteria. Those are basically the Act 250 criteria. So you have to show that your project meets all of that criteria in the application. You have to show consistency with the town and regional plans, and you also have to show that you've explored co-location opportunities before building a new town. So you have to look around and say, here's why we need a new tower in this location, because these other locations won't cut it. We can't provide our service to build a new tower.
Can I stop you for just a second?
Yeah.
If a project has to meet all the Act 250 criteria, all the 26 of them or whatever,
It's a subset of those, I would say.
oh, a subset.
Yeah.
Okay, so not all of them. So,
It's not exactly the same, but it's most.
okay, most, I'm gonna
Mostly the sites.
most.
And a lot of the sites.
So if that's true, then how is that your process faster? Because I've heard that that's one of the arguments for 248A is that it's faster than Act
Well,
250.
it's
So,
one-stop shop. Act 250, you gotta get a town permit,
okay, so it's just like you come to you and
and that's it.
you determine all of the things.
That's right. So in that respect is faster. There are also deadlines in the statute by which we have to act on applications. Whether they're faster or slower than the Act 250 action, I don't know, but there are specific deadlines that we're supposed to meet on reviewing that.
And are those deadlines are they specific to the 248A, or are they
Yes.
based on rules of?
No, they're specific to 248 or in the statute. Those can be changed. Just like
Just like anything.
just like it. But there are, and I'll get to those. So let's
Okay,
get there now.
cool.
So for projects of limited size and scope, we're required to issue the PUC are required to issue a final decision within 60 days if there are no significant issues, or 90 days where there are issues. Okay, and then for larger projects, you have to issue a decision within 60 days if there's no significant issues, or 180 days if there are. And now what I can tell you about this is that when we do have contested projects, and we have about 5 or 6 of them going right now, they take a lot longer than 60 or 90 or 180 days. Because once you get into the litigation process, it just takes a lot longer. There's motions, people ask for extensions, parties want to negotiate and come back to you. People file amendments, in which case they have to start over.
Okay, this is, I think maybe the connection was missing. So everybody, there is a hearing before the PUC. After everybody gets notice and sends out notice and sends back, I want to intervene or I want to be heard.
Right.
What happens next?
Okay, so let's say folks intervene. Let's say the town intervenes as well.
Yeah.
Then we would have first thing we would have is scheduling conference. We'd sort out a schedule for the litigation, which includes discovery and things like that, right?
Okay, so this is when it
Depositions.
starts getting to be a more formal court-like procedure.
Well, very much so. So now you have to submit evidence and testimony under oath. And we act like a court in that way. And we go through that schedule, and eventually, so we'll have a evidentiary hearing at the end of that schedule. And then eventually we will issue a decision.
Within 60 or 180 days.
Like I said, once you get into that schedule, usually that time
Maybe
line,
we need to
we
look at
won't
that.
meet it. No.
That might be part of the problem. People are feeling rushed or like they don't have time.
Right, so we bend over backwards to accommodate due process where we can. So we frequently go longer than these time limits in a contested case. For the non-contested stuff, we hit all these deadlines.
So, thank you. Pro se litigants,
Right.
you probably have quite a few of those.
Quite a few.
And I know that our regular court system does too. And in my discussions with many judges, this is a conversation about how do judges deal with pro se litigants. Do you collectively, not you personally, but procedures to help pro se litigants? Do you have training of anybody in the PUC for how to help pro se litigants or interact with pro se litigants? Because they are always at a disadvantage if they're unless it's a very unique case.
Unless they're an attorney.
Unless they're an attorney, but then I guess they're self-represented and in a different way. But in talking to a lot of judges, they have things that they do to help pro se litigants along with the process, not with their case, but their process. And
Well, you're limited, of course, because
Yeah.
you're the judge in the
of
procedure.
course, but there are ways that
We do have guides,
Okay.
citizens guides for participation in our process.
And have the members of the PUC, the actual members of the PUC been trained to like,
Especially.
it just seems like,
No.
it seems like it's a special skill to be able to work with pro se litigants in a way that helps them feel like they have access to the process.
We have pro se litigants in almost every case.
Yeah,
So we're all experienced in that regard.
yeah.
I do all of these telecom cases personally. So yes, I've dealt with many pro se litigants. You try and help where you can. You have to be fair though to all the parties. So it's
Yes,
difficult.
I know it's a fine
It's a
line. to
difficult
walk.
balance.
It's definitely, I get that.
But again, like I said, we can go out of our way to go past these statutory deadlines to accommodate the needs of the parties,
Mhm.
especially those, the pro se litigants who are not familiar with legal proceedings. That takes them longer to get their evidence together. Their emotions are often, they're pro se litigants. They don't really know the fine points of legal motions, things
Yeah.
like that. So you try and help where you can.
Okay,
Okay,
And that's pretty much it on the procedure, unless there's other things people want to talk about regarding
Okay.
procedure. I
I
get
think
to the
we'll know
bill.
better when we finish the rest of
Yeah.
the witnesses.
As far as the bill goes, so we support S-159, which is your bill, Senator Cummings, which just does away with the sunset. We've done, as the department mentioned, the department did a report last or 2024. We did a report in 2020. Before that, there was the health department report on the RF emissions. I don't recall exactly when that was, maybe 2015, 2016. None of those reports recommended any changes to the statute. So the House version of this bill has us doing a 2-year, 2-workshop study on the same exact topics. It's unlikely we're going to come up with any recommended changes. So we object to that. We don't have the time or personnel or the appropriations to do this study. It's rather involved. So
Okay,
so
it's gonna get pinned to the wall across the hall.
well, I can't do that, but if you could do that,
No, you can't. No, I believe it was referred to as the butcher the other day. We'll take all the money or anything we like
Oh.
and hang it on the wall. Okay, it sounds. I mean, people who lose are not happy.
yes, of
I know
course,
it's,
of course not.
we can't change that. We can understand that. I think as Mr. Thompson said, if you find out you're the one that's gonna pay the price for the public good, it's not always a good feeling.
No.
We can. But the other one is understanding how people work with the system. It's not the system per se, it's not the law per se, it's how people can access it that seems to be some of the trouble. But I may change my mind after hearing from witnesses. But that we can perhaps do something about, and I've got the 180 days in complex cases or contested cases may not be enough time
It definitely isn't.
to
It's not
do,
even-
which may be part of what's playing into people's feelings that they're not heard because you've only got 5 minutes to hear them because there's 100 of them. And we deal with that here too.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, once we get into the litigation, it takes as long as it takes. We
Okay,
don't really look at those guidelines. There's no consequence for not meeting those guidelines.
can we set up one of those again?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, it's It's very helpful. But like I said, for 85% of the cases we get, we meet these
Okay.
deadlines. It's only the contested cases which go outside the deadline. So I don't really think that plays a part. It certainly doesn't in my work.
As long as we don't crack down on you. and say,
No, we don't,
"Oh,
no.
sorry."
It does prevent us from doing things like site visits and public hearings. Because we do have to cut some non-evidentiary stuff out of the process. So it does affect us in that way, but as far as the evidence
Okay.
and the litigation schedule, it doesn't affect that.
Can I ask another question?
Okay.
Oh my God, what it just went out of my head. I'm looking at the statutes and I came up with a question now. I think I remember that in the last couple of years, there was an audit done of one of your procedures. And there were,
Did you have an audit?
was it this part of it?
I think it was everything.
Was it everything?
Yeah.
And my recollection was that it was about this issue of time, and whether you were.
It was about,
Yeah.
case disposition time.
Exactly.
Yep.
And there were some cases where you were not meeting the deadlines, and I'm wondering.
I'm sure there were. But what I can say for this, because I work in this under the statute a lot, for non-contested cases, we are meeting deadlines. I can't speak for all of our cases, but
Right. I just wondered, I think there were subsections
Yeah, I'm sure there
of
were, yeah,
processes,
yeah.
so I'm wondering if this process was one that there were issues or not.
not at all.
Okay.
Well, listen, but if the timelines are stopping things from site visits and that and public hearings and that
Right.
contributing to people's feeling that they aren't heard.
Right.
Because not everybody has the time or the inclination or the ability to go through the legal intervening, testifying thing. That might be something we could look at.
You can look at the notice time limits as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Maybe 30 days is not
30-day
enough.
comment after complete
Yeah.
application. That
Yeah,
was
maybe you want more time on that, as long as it's
Okay.
clear in the statute, and that's great for us. I mean, we can work with that. It's just,
Yeah, I mean, there is a level at which towns do need to pay attention.
Mhm.
If we've given them enough time to pay attention, we can do it, but we will hear from VLCT.
yeah, you should.
But,
They had some really good comments in the House.
okay. We'll definitely have them in. Okay, any other questions?
But in general, we support 248A. The sunsets make our life difficult, as Mr. Thompson was saying. You know, we get 140 in a typical year. I've gotten over 100 in the last 5 months.
Okay.
Over 100. I just haven't checked March yet, but there's been a lot in March, and it's increasing exponentially as we closer to June when this thing sunsets.
Okay,
And this happens every 3 years.
every 3 years.
And it puts a
because
lot of strain
everyone-
on. Yeah, a
Which
lot of-
means it
yeah.
makes it harder for you to do a good job, which
Yeah.
means people are feeling less.
It's not just us, it's the department, it's A&R, we're all looking at
Okay.
these locations, so it makes it very difficult.
All right,
So I would encourage you
Reason,
to
I
think
mean-
about that.
if we do away with the sunset and a problem arises, nothing says we can't go back in
Right.
and change the statute.
You don't have to wait 3 years.
No,
Do
we don't have
do it now. Do it now if you'd like.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, thank you. Back to my agenda. Okay, Peter Gill.
Want focus or just speak?
It is your dog and pony show, however it works best for you.
We'll just join him and add.
That would be
Yeah.
fine. You just have to bring your own chair.
We did a quick.
It's limits to our generosity. Okay, so
Yeah, should be able to share.
and just let us know what the land use review board, how you fit into all of this.
Yeah.
Sure, well, Pete's getting that, maybe I'll introduce us.
Yeah.
This is Peter Giller, the Executive Director of the Land Use Review Board, and my name is Brooke Dingledean. I'm a member of the Land Use Review Board. We are the replacement board for the Natural Resources Board. This is, we are a 5-member board now of professionals with different experiences in land use permitting, law, planning. We have regional planners, municipal planners on our board. So it's a very interesting diversity of expertise, and hopefully coming together, we are able to use all of that broad expertise to be able to implement the changes that Act 181 has presented for the Act 250 program.
We are going to 181 today.
Good. Let's take a look
Lots
at
of
that.
emails.
And I'll just say from my personal experience, I was a land use attorney and litigation attorney for the past 30 years for a Central Vermont law firm, Alston Jackman, the firm at Weston. During that 30-year period, I litigated at Act 250 as well as at the Public Utility Commission on tower cases. So I did tower cases through Act 250 from 96 until about 09. And then the Public Utility Commission for about the last 10 years.
I worked for the Natural Resources Board for about 8 years as an attorney, not handle a single telecom related case during that time. Spent about 5 years at Norwich, and I was doing legal work for them. And went back to the board in this current role as executive director. To get involved in the study that led up to Act 181 and 181 implementation now, as Brooke was saying. So today, we understood that the committee was interested in looking at the Act 250 processes as they're kind of comparing those processes with the PUC. So we're not advocating on this bill in any way, but just wanting to get you all understanding kind of where how Act 250 works in terms of its processes.
We made some significant changes to Act 250, so this could be a good update on the committee.
Yeah, and I'm gonna focus on kind of our public processes and those types of things for this. We can certainly get somebody in at some point to talk a little bit more about 181 and some of those changes too. Just to level set on everybody in terms of how Act 250 and the 248A process kind of overlap, as you heard from Hunter earlier today. It's sort of an applicant's choice, right? So within the Act 250 statute, we regulate development, which includes towers for communication and broadcast purposes, as you can see here, independent of what the acreage is involved in those processes. But we also say in that statute that development does not include telecommunication facilities when it has 248 certificate of public good.
If it doesn't go through 248A and it's 20 feet tall, it only has to have, what was it, the 50 foot. I forget what he called it, but it doesn't have to be on 10 acres.
Yes, yes. So you're probably familiar with our, standard 10-acre jurisdiction or 1-acre jurisdiction. But for these types of projects, it's based on the vertical footage. Yeah. So let me go past that slide just to give you kind of an overview of who we are as Act 250. We have this newly appointed 5-member land use review board that is overseeing the program.
But it is run, the heart of it really is these district commissions that are appointed through the governor's office. And they're the ones that are reviewing and issuing land use permits or Act 250 permits at the end of the day. They're citizens that we provide training to do that quasi judicial. They're assisted by the district coordinators and the technicians in the various districts, as you can see on the map, the layout of our districts across the state. Those district coordinators are issuing jurisdictional opinions, determining whether a project needs an Act 250 permit or it does not need a permit. They're also helping shepherd the permit process. They're helping guide the district commission through that process. They're helping applicants, they're helping neighbors, they're helping those that are interested in the process to understand what the process, how the process runs.
I'll jump in here. And if I can jump in just for a minute, because one of the tests that I performed during the first year that we were in office this past year was to present to conduct an appeals study and produce a report, not just on how to speed up appeals, but also to look at our own program in terms of what to do there for the permitting portion, the first portion before some decision would be appealed. And one of the issues that the stakeholders spent a lot of time talking about, but it was a little bit outside the rails of the amount of time we had for that process and study, was we looked at ombuds, people, permit specialists, some kind of support person, because our program has experienced, we talked about the district coordinator. That is the person that interfaces with the public, helps the permittees, the applicants, also helps municipalities and planning commissions and select boards at those towns to understand how they can be involved in the process. So we have a person that is far different at the PUC. You don't have that individual that shepherds an application through the process and is able to make sure that people get the information, they get the guidance that they need to be able to participate. Now, the study that we conducted about getting a permit specialist or ombuds person to help in that is because at A&R, they used to have permit specialists. And they were sort of the traffic cops of, these are all the A&R permits you're going to need. You might need air pollution and you might need some stormwater, whatever it might be. And that person that job got eliminated at A&R. And there was a computer thing that was a replacement. It's called the Permit Navigator or something. That's now going away as well. So the big, huge difference, if you're concerned about dealing with the public and assisting pro se litigants particularly, but also very importantly, the municipalities who have volunteer staff, select boards and all that, we have that person. And the thing in the study for the appeals report was establishing a separate environmental justice kind of person to help with permitting for the permitting programs that are all now subject to the environmental justice obligations under that law for 2022. If there were across these permitting processes, someone that could, we could reestablish that kind of support position or office. And what the appeals report suggested was additional study in that regard for the LURB to do that, not because the legislature required us to, but to undertake further study of that, because what's happened for our district coordinators is they are still serving all comers, but that burden has increased for them because of the elimination of the A&R permitting specialist. Okay. So I'm just presenting that to you. I can certainly provide you with a copy of
that would be very helpful. We could post it on our website and read it.
And there was specific conversation about the Public Utility Commission, Agency of Natural Resources, as well as the LURB, sharing that kind of, doing a study to try to see if that kind of position could be employed across permitting programs to have the kind of support that would be necessary, and that could be affordable. So I just throw that out and I will be happy to follow up and present that conversation and the, information we amassed with that regard.
If you could get that to us, that would be very helpful.
Would be happy to.
Yeah, I think I remember you mentioning that when you did the presentation to us on the appeals report, but you didn't include that in your testimony on 325. That would have been helpful to talk about it.
Yeah, I wasn't specifically on that one, but,
Okay, so,
yeah, and unfortunately, because we were short on time for the reporting on it,
yeah,
it was like, we identified it, it was like, this really needs more work and more study to figure out how could we do it, because it really was identified as being something that would be critically important in helping the public and the municipalities to better participate in these processes.
and across all, not just one, but all of them. That's really interesting.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just feel negative vibrations coming from across.
Yeah, I mean, it costs a little bit of money, but it might be very well spent.
I'm not gonna disagree with that at all.
Navigators. Good things.
Okay, think,
Now we're stuck.
you can be.
You already decided that this morning. Remember?
Yeah, wasn't it AI? Oh, AI, AI.
There we go. Okay, moving on to the permitting application process. Our process is a citizen-based one, as I mentioned. The commissioners are lay citizens, but we also involve the public in that process. Moving forward, what I'd like to do now is hope that if it works, we will get into a little bit more about those public processes in the coming slides here, but I've got the 10 criteria on this page, but if you move on to the following page, you will see the 32 criteria, and 1(8)(c) under Act 181 comes into play, then we'll have 33. But you can see them all listed here, that Act 250 reviews when an application comes in. The commissioners need to ensure that each application that comes through the door meets each of these criteria. Not every criteria is going to be applicable to every project, but they need to make a positive finding on
I
each
can see
under
that
each
not
one.
all of them would be applicable to cell towers.
Yeah,
Yes, correct.
the 248A does import most of the Act 250 criteria, like Greg was talking about. It imports 1 through 8. And then is it 9L, Greg?
I think so.
I think it's 9L. And then criterion 10 that talks about local and regional or municipal and regional plans, that is covered by a criteria that's called orderly development over at the Public Utility Commission. So it is true that almost all of the criteria are imported in, and most of them are interpreted similarly. Although the Public Utility Commission does have sort of a card that they could play to say, even if there's an undue adverse impact, say on aesthetics, the public good requires this, and they can use it as a get out of jail free card. I just think to bypass the finding that there's an undue adverse impact. So very similar, but a little.
Okay, so application review process. This gets a little bit complicated, but let me break it down for you. So in that first box, this is just showing, okay, the application comes in, the district coordinator that we were talking about before, they're the ones that make sure that it's complete.
This has already been through local planning and zoning, if it exists.
Well, there's no need to go through local zoning first or anything. They're independent processes. And I would mention that, but over at the PUC, if you do 248A, you don't have to do local or Act 250. So so the problem that we have is not the Act 250. It's probably similar time-wise to PUC. It's that we have this duplicative thing of having to do the,
local
it was
planning
not
and zoning,
eliminated.
and then coming here for planning and zoning. And
So instead of being the only permitting being Act 250 like the PUC, unfortunately, we still have the dual permitting necessary,
yes,
which could be eliminated, but for Act 250, it was not. It was left duplicative. And not that, and I don't mean to say that they're not the same criteria specifically.
no, it's
But,
the
yeah.
local control and our control of our town, and we give that up. We hold that very precious.
So just to highlight on this, screen here, overview, we've got, a noticing period that occurs on that, kind of middle bar. And then you have 3 different types of application processes that, could happen, on an application. You've got an administrative amendment, mostly for record keeping purposes, a minor review and a major review. Both are, notice periods and sent to adjoining neighbors and parties that are designated within the statute. So we're going to start here with the minor review process in this next slides here. So this is our minor review process.
Just before you go on,
Go ahead.
the administrative amendment process is very similar to the de minimis, where there's just like an antenna being switched out, and it's mostly just a paper process of filing the information. So that we won't talk about.
I've got one little slide on it at the end.
Okay.
but, yeah.
We're not worried about the minutes from this.
So in terms of the minor process, again, the application is reviewed. It's one that is found that it will not present significant adverse impacts under any of the 10 criteria, therefore may follow the minor process. Nobody has specifically requested a hearing during that notice period. Again, as you can see, published in the newspaper, sent to adjoining neighbors and parties. And we'll get into some of the statutory parties in a moment too. The commission then will deliberate on that application. There'll be a draft permit that's posted for everyone to see with the conditions in that draft permit, land use permit. And then if no one is seeking a hearing, and the commission will then issue that permit. That process typically on average is somewhere around 3 months after it's been determined a complete application. So the major review process, very similar. However, this is where there is a hearing that is held. And again, you start with that notice of the application. We have a public database where all these applications can be viewed by anyone in the public. With the hearing process for major applications, we now have a requirement under Act 181 requiring us to have a form that the landowner applicant will put on a sign in front of the parcels so that people can view that as well as something that folks can go and then they can get onto our database and see more of the documents through that notice. Then they will conduct a hearing, as you saw in some of those earlier slides where they were conducting hearings. The chair will run that hearing, bring in the applicant will bring in their witnesses and experts, etc. Anyone who wants to participate make a petition for party status, which we'll go through in a moment here, which allows them to participate in that process. We also have what's called a friends of the commission. So if there's somebody that doesn't want to seek party status, knows that there's they're giving away their appeal rights for that process, but they have some information they want to share to the commissions, they can do that as a friend of the commission, essentially. And then the commission will deliberate on that process post hearing. They'll oftentimes ask for additional information and then issue a decision after they've received the last item within 20 days from that end of those deliberations.
Now, I'd like to explain a little bit about the hearing at Act 250. It's a real hearing. There is a commission and they invite people come and they talk and they testify under oath and they're asked questions. They're allowed to be cross-examined. So everybody hears all the evidence and everybody gets to ask all of the cross-examination questions that they think are relevant. And it is conducted not terribly formally like a courtroom, but the APA is the standard and we do follow the rules of evidence, but they're relaxed standards. Whereas at the Public Utility Commission, while they say that they hold a hearing, it is not, all of the testimony and evidence is all put in ahead of time on paper. And really the only thing that happens at that hearing is this your testimony that you put in writing? Yes, it is. And then people are allowed to cross-examine if they have any questions at that point. But it is a very different situation. It is not a bring the community in and have a conversation. I mean, not that it isn't somewhat formal at the district commission, but it is I just want you to understand there's a vast difference when we are using a word hearing. We are describing two totally different processes.
And our hearings are generally in the in or near the location of the project.
And these hearings, the ones you're describing now, are the district commission ones, not the full, not you all, the full.
Yeah, so at this point, any the board does not hear any land use permits.
Right, so it's the three people in the district commission.
Right.
And they an alternate, one of them is not available.
Yeah, usually we have three, they can have two, but it is usually three people in a hearing.
And they have a district coordinator with them who's very familiar with the statute. And then we also have on-call attorneys that are our staff attorneys. If any evidentiary issues arise or something of that nature for legal support to make sure that, yeah, because this is a citizenry board. And, you know, in terms of the process, this is the strength of Act 250 is that you have the ability to come and hear as a member of the public. There is an event that goes on, whereas with Public Utility Commission, it's, you know, the lawyers have put in all of the documents. And so that's what I'm trying to portray. It's just so different because all the information is talked about, articulated and discussed and presented to that tribunal and the public at the same time. And that is the strength of our system in terms of being able to involve the public in that process.
Questions on that?
No.
So what happens at a typical hearing? Sorry, it's a little bit wordy slide here. I'll leave that for you all. Just you've got it in your materials, and I think we've gone through that pretty clearly here. So party status, as I mentioned before, like how do you get to be part of the process here? So these are statutory parties by rights. So that means that in the statute, these entities are listed. They automatically are part of the process. So the applicant, of course, the landowner, the municipality, the regional planning commissions, the variety of state entities or state agencies, ANR, AFM are ones that typically will be involved in our processes.
Adjacent landowners aren't parties by right?
No.
They still have to demonstrate that they can be impacted by it, have a justiciable issue that is not otherwise that
Yeah, this is,
Yes, so
I'm confusing the PUC standard in my head.
this is what I was referring to earlier,
Yeah.
that there are standards for people who can have a particularized.
particularized
And-
interest, yeah.
And that was intentional to limit the number of people who could appeal a decision. And this was, we've talked about this a lot in my boarding committee. So that you have to, I mean, you should explain it because you'll explain it better.
you're doing a great job. Yeah, so kind of focusing on that particularized interest piece, thinking back to that slide that we had of all the criteria. Somebody has to say, okay, under one of those criteria, I have an issue, and my participation in that and the result that comes from the commission, or potential result from that commission can be affected by it.
Right, like somebody's project is draining stormwater into your land, then that could be a particularized interest. But just being a neighbor doesn't mean you have a particularized interest.
Yeah, so another good example, if you're a neighbor that is upstream and you're complaining about the loss of water withdrawal that's coming from that stream, you may not have a particularized interest in that case because you're upstream instead of downstream.
Yeah.
And a non-particularized interest would be like climate emissions or traffic in the whole neighborhood, because that's not a particular specific interest, it's just a macro aggregate interest.
Yeah, you have to differentiate yourself from the general public. That's basically the standard. But I will say that at the Public Utility Commission, the intervention statute, I have found very, very consistent with, and I have articulated it and argued it as a particularized interest that may be affected by the project. And I think Mr. Favors ruled on those very consistently. So I don't necessarily, I don't know if maybe language needs to be added for consistency, but I do think that they are very. Okay.
So at the end of the process, the commission says, yes, you have final party status. So somebody will make a petition at the beginning and say, yes, this is why I meet this. Commission will evaluate that. At the end, they say, okay, yep, finally, yes, you do, or no, you don't.
And that's to hear the evidence and for them to actually provide, the evidence that supports the claim that they provided in the beginning.
And then I promised that I did have a slide on administrative amendments, are much swifter process here again for record keeping because it's based on this no likelihood of impacts under the criteria standard. And in those cases, the commission will allow the district coordinator to issue an administrative amendment to cover that particular funding issue. Some examples of how those are used. So with that, any questions for us?
Oh, one other thing that I would just highlight in terms of vastly different process is discovery. There's not, and that, as Mr. Faber testified, all bets are off when you get involved in that litigation process. And so in the appeals study, for example, when we were proposing a model for the board to become an appellate body, one of the things that we were suggesting is under the APA, we reduce the amount of discovery and just require a certain amount of time right before the hearing for disclosures of witness lists, summaries of what the witnesses will testify to, and then all the documents you can put in discovery. And absent some really important reason that justifies engaging it further in actual discovery, the district commissions don't have discovery like the PUC would have. And so we're saying, if we were to become the appellate board, not the environmental division where all that discovery happens, we were trying to streamline the process by saying, you have to give all your information ahead of time so that the information is exchanged to eliminate what tends to be one of the longest delays time-wise in the entire adjudication process. And that is the discovery process. You serve questions, you get 30 days to respond to them. You know, it goes back and forth quite a bit. So that is
And
quite
that's in your
different.
process.
That's quite different at the district commission versus the public utility commission. You don't get bogged down in that process.
In yours, you don't get bogged down.
Correct.
It's that, but PUC,
Yes.
they have the rules of evidence that they follow.
Right, but just be clear that when our district commission makes a decision, presently it gets appealed to the environmental division.
Right.
And then that litigation process can happen.
De novo.
Exactly.
Okay. So
You've been listening.
I have been
You're right, that report.
PUC
I'm a
is
good
much,
student.
as I said, it used to be utility lawyers arguing with utility lawyers and everyone knew the rules. With the advent of cell towers showing up in people's backyards, the public became much more interested. And so you've got a very legal structure. You were set up more recently, I think, and a little more of a hybrid. And that, I think, is what we're trying to do, is maintain legality, but also allow the average person with some effort to be able to access.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, well, I have a question for you, but first, it's not, there are other issues that the PUC
Oh, yeah.
handles that the public has an interest in and have. It's not just this item of PUC towers, because there are other things.
We were
Believe me.
studying,
Where,
distribution lines.
yes, things like that. So people have, and I mean, I think that because it's much more of a legal courtroom type
Yes.
procedure than your procedure is, it's more intimidating for
Different
regular-
history.
the lay person. But my question is, I'm assuming you don't have a position on this bill. You were invited in to tell us about your procedure and how it differs, or do you have a position on the bill?
Or it does not.
We don't have a position.
So
I think we have looked at the volumes to ensure that, to understand what percentage is de minimis, so that, we did not, we wanted to express concerns on capacity if there were any concerns, and I know of no concerns on capacity.
the concerns on.
Meaning if it were allowed to sunset, I think that our district commissions would have the ability to process the application.
Okay, I see.
That was one of my biggest concerns, and so I was trying to get an idea from Hunter's testimony and so we looked into that yesterday to be sure that we didn't have any red flags or concerns for you all. But there's no board position. We're not asking them to take over we have existing jurisdiction, whatever's decided, we are prepared to do our job.
We do nothing to pick up the pieces. All right. Okay. Any further questions? If not, thank you. This was, I think, that was on natural, economic development. When we did a lot of this, it's very helpful to see the new system kind of laid out with the land use review and, okay, that is helpful.
And we're happy to get you that appeals report.
Yes, that would
I'll
be
send
helpful.
it to you right away, and I'll send you 2 documents, the entire appeals report, and then I will extricate. It's actually in an appendix, 2 pages, specific on the ombuds permit specialist
That
conversations.
would be especially helpful. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your having us.
Okay, Annette Smith. Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Annette Smith. I'm Executive Director of Vermonters for a Clean Environment. We have been working with Vermonters in our communities 26 years. Vermont's Hurricane Environment was founded in 1999 to deal with a large power plant and pipeline project in Rutland and Bennington counties. And since then, we've worked with citizens, assisting them in having a voice in what goes on in their communities. We've worked with people with Act 50 cases, Agency of Natural Resources permitting, Public Utility Commission cases. We've worked on landfills, large farms, quarries, gravel pits, groundwater protection, issues that Vermonters bring to us. Beginning in about 2009, most of our work began to focus on the Public Utility Commission because of industrial wind cases. And then 2015, because of a lot more solar cases, we have gotten involved in a very small number of solar cases, but still not every development is a good development. In recent years, the majority of our work has been on tower cases. And so I'm going to take you through what it's like and explain to you why Section 248A is not working. I want to be very clear up front. The bill that you're looking at, H 527, is essentially my list of what to give to the PUC to do rulemaking. And the PUC had said they didn't want to do it. Then the committee gave it to the industry and they made some changes. And then the committee made some changes and they then turned it into these workshops. And then the PUC said, we don't want to do this either. And so I've been trying to find ways. I've also given the committee and the PUC a list of proposed changes to the statute, which apparently nobody wants to do either. So I come to you with some frustration for the nature of the type of work that I've been having to do and am looking forward to finding solutions. This slide is a good example of what is currently happening. The image on the left is a tower that has been put up in Eden next to Route 100. And this is this company that's relatively new to Vermont, Industrial Tower and Wireless. They intend to put these all over the state. They apply for just what you see there with an 18-foot width antenna on top for radio service. Nobody really seems to understand what the radio service is about. We've heard maybe it's for Amazon delivery trucks and things like that. But then they're what some people call rent seeking, and they lease out the space. So there is one tower that has antennas on it. T-Mobile, when you hear about the volume of antennas, T-Mobile's putting antennas everywhere that there's a structure. They're swapping out antennas. We're seeing a lot of swapping out of antennas all over the state. I'm not convinced it has anything to do with the sunsetting of Section 248A. I just think the industry is doing a lot of updating of its technology. So in addition to adding these antennas, they also add a generator and they add a building for the generator. And because of the way these are being permitted, those issues cannot be raised. So you can't talk about the aesthetics of a fully built out ITW tower, which can have two other carriers on it too. You can only talk about the aesthetics of what's being proposed. And that's an issue that people have raised numerous times in all the communities that this company is now operating. Representative Southworth summed up very well what I feel came out of the House committee. The House committee heard a lot of very good testimony. We got a lot of good public comment. He said, I believe there are issues with the siting process. I'm very concerned that Vermonters through this climate effects are not able to be heard. I'm not convinced that the current process will be enhanced by our recommendations in the bill. Revisiting the current statute to me is the answer, and that is why I voted no. And that rings true to me based on what I heard in that committee. And I do believe that every member of that committee recognized that there was a problem. But at a certain point, they did not produce something that's going to solve the problems that we're seeing. So what are the problems? There are new problems that have been revealed with Section 248A because there are more towers being proposed closer to homes and villages and more towns that are proposed. Now, imagine each of you that if a company has come in and proposed a tower 500 feet from their house, try and keep that in mind as you consider what it's like to be faced with a section 248A application. Now, I've presented three different images here. And they're color coded. So this one on the left, you see a lot of green. That's AT&T. The orange is Verizon, and the pink red is Industrial Tower and Wireless, the new company. When we were here 3 years ago, we made a differentiation. AT&T was kind of the good guys, and the others were not behaving so well. In most of these green towers on the left, AT&T did not place the towers in the initial spot that they proposed. They were too close to homes, too close to schools. They worked with the communities, or they dropped the site, and they seemed to be willing to do everything possible to avoid a contested case. There had been only one contested case since 2016. That was in 2017, a Verizon tower was opposed by Waterbury and A&R. It was denied. And there were no contested cases until very recent. Now, the middle slide shows the towers that have recently been approved. And the slide on the right shows the towers that are currently in process. You'll see one AT&T tower, that's in Pownell. The previous two contested cases were in Granville, and that was an AT&T tower, and Enosburg, and that was an industrial tower in Martin's. I will say that since Granville and took place, which they got their CPG in 2024, and now what's going on in Pownell, I don't consider there's any good guys anymore. It's heavy litigation, and they're digging in and litigating and burying the neighbors in litigation rather than working with people. So it's all pretty much the same. Verizon and Industrial Tower and Wireless are represented by the same law firm. The attorney who did their cases for a long time, something happened to him. They now have other attorneys doing the cases who have no experience with the PUC. So it's a kind of a strange world to see what's going on. I want to thank this committee because I really have felt that you have listened to us. Senator Cummings, especially, I really feel as though you have, every time we've come to you, have done something that says we hear you. And so in 2019, we came to you and said there are health issues. And a report was required of the health department. And in that report, they said that this reinforces efforts in public health to minimize the dose of radio frequency radiation, especially to children. But did anything come of it? Well, we saw after that COVID and a lot of wireless build out, a lot of antennas put on schools, a lot of more exposure to children. This is a study just from this month, and it shows that current regulatory limits for RF are 15 to 900-fold higher than estimates of exposure levels associated with cancer risk, and also 18 to 24-fold higher than levels of protective male reproductive health. Health effects and property values are the top two issues that people raise. And I have to tell them, I'm sorry, nobody cares. We can't talk about it. However, we still do have the right to have siting. We can have setbacks. We can say, not here, too close. And so it's not like it's completely off the table. And I have provided the language that is specific in the Telecommunications Act in a different report. So in 2020, we came to you and said, we're concerned about small cell build out, and you required a report. And the Public Utility Commission issued a 2-page report after we put a lot of work into it. I will say that it personally affected me very deeply. It was like the biggest kick in the gut I have ever gotten in my life. Because it just said, there's nothing we need to do. Well, okay, what was happening in Burlington, Massachusetts? In 2019, this is an 11-page document for small wireless.
This is 5G.
This was when there was concern about 5G, but it was also, that's when in 2019, that was when the health report came out. But in 2020, there was a lot of concern about, yes, small cells being put out in neighborhoods. And so every other state except Vermont and Connecticut do siting through municipal zoning. And so there are examples of small cell bylaws all over the country. Keene, New Hampshire has one. Burlington, Massachusetts has one. We are kind of prohibited from doing it because there's no vehicle to do it. There's section 248A, but it doesn't address small cells. And municipal zoning, people haven't incorporated small cells into their zoning. So what's happened? Well, we're seeing small cells deployed all over Vermont without any regulatory process at all. The one on the left is in Rochester. We're not sure what it is. But the neighborhood says that they get Verizon coverage, whereas they didn't before. The one in the middle went up a year or two ago in Granville. And I told Hunter about these things. They've gone out and looked at them, but they don't have any record of these things. They're trying to find them. The one in Marlboro is a bit older. I did all the research, absolutely no regulatory approval necessary. So I mean, the reason we have opt out on smart meters is because I saw trouble coming. I'm good at seeing trouble coming. I saw we're going to start seeing more small cells. You want these things right outside your bedroom window or your children's bedroom window? We don't have to have them, but we do need to have some standards. We have no standards. In 2023.
Can I stop you just to ask? Can you go back to those photos?
Sure.
The small cells, those are on telephone poles? So presumably they have to get permission from whoever owns the pole, right?
Presumably.
Is there a record of what is?
As to utilities, I don't know. It's not a public record.
Okay, I'm just curious.
I mean, in my conversation with Hunter, he indicated they didn't really have a way of finding out. He said, send me pictures. And you know, the people in Granville, it's an AT&T thing. Nobody quite understands what it's for, but it's on this back road that's affected by the Granville Tower.
Sometimes that's how they get cells, internet service is too small.
It was, yeah, but it wasn't for internet service. And I will address this idea about cell phones and internet, and how many people rely on cell phones. I live in VTEL service territory. We've had fiber optics since 2014. We don't have cell service in most places in my area, but everybody uses the Wi-Fi off of the fiber optic cable. And there is a real issue with building out more of these towers into these rural areas that don't have cell coverage because they're narrow, winding roads, and that you don't want people texting and being on the phone driving on these roads. And so the idea that somehow it's going to benefit the area, there are a lot of accidents that people have because of using their phones. And so you get on these smaller, narrow, winding roads. It is a public safety issue. So in 2023, Attorney Dingledine, Will Dodge of AT&T, and I put our heads together and said, we need to do something to change this process. It's too legalistic, and you heard us. And you put this in the statute. That we thought what we were asking for was a stakeholder process where the LCT and a group of us would come together and we would meet and we would talk about how can we make the process better for that section 248A. And instead, well, I remember asking Attorney Dingledine during the summer, has anyone from DPS contacted you? No. Well, very soon after that, what comes out is a press release in Vermont Business Magazine that the Department of Public Service is doing Sunday. And they're holding public meetings. Okay, I know the Brattleboro meeting apparently started at 8:30 at night. I asked why. Oh, we could only get the room. I know two people who attended the Bennington meeting. They told me all they wanted to talk about was health checks. That was what they talked about. I think Allison went to the one in
St. Johnsbury.
but half of
Only three people.
3 people.
There was three, yeah.
Okay, so in other words, then they issued a report. Now, at this time, we said, don't give this to the PUC because of what had happened 3 years before. So here we are again. Here's the data on contested cases and why there are new problems that had not appeared in 2023. There have been 12 contested cases between 2022 and 2026. The ones with the asterisk on the left are 5 cases where the towns oppose the tower and have recommended denial. There are currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 contested cases at the Public Utility Commission, some of which are Verizon and some of which are ITW, and 2 of which are AT&T. ITW has said, we're going to build out a network all over the state. And so regardless of section 248, they're just plodding along. In Marshfield, Verizon said, well, we did some reorganization and now we're doing more. So it's the reason that these towers are coming has nothing to do with section 248A. It has to do with whatever the business model of the company is. But why is there a need to have this at section 248A? Because it's a statewide network? Well, where's there any evidence that the public has about the network? Wouldn't it be nice to have a map of what your plans are so we can plan for it? But there isn't. So the issues that have arisen have to do with the new issues have to do with the use of the words recommendations, comments, and public comments. And this surfaced in Westmore, and there is currently an appeal at the Vermont Supreme Court of the PUC's approval of this tower next to Lake Willoughby. And one of the complicating factors was that one of the select board members was the leasing landowner, which creates very challenging circumstances on the town level. And so they didn't immediately get up to speed, but there was a balloon test, and the planning commission chair, who'd been chair for 25 years, didn't see the balloon and submitted comments to that effect. But it turns out, as time went on and discovery was held, and that we got the balloon tests from the previous test that nobody was notified about, the balloon had dropped almost immediately. And so, yeah, he didn't see it because the balloon test, it was not manned, and the balloon came down. And so there were factors that led to the planning commission then going through their town plan and their bylaw, and then they submitted that as testimony, and the select board then looked at it and said, okay, this doesn't comply, we recommend denial. ITW's attorney moved to strike it all and struck the public comment because it was struck as public comment because that's how it was filed. And so the PUC uses these words comments interchangeably with recommendations. And section 248A is a very long statute. I don't know if any of you have read it, but it is a very prescriptive statute. Since the PUC has never done rulemaking, so when I go to a community and explain the process to them, which I have done over and over and over and over now in the last few years, and I'm tired of it, I do a search for the word municipal. And the word municipal shows up 17 times. And then I take them through what their rights are as a municipality. And they learn all kinds of things about what their rights are. But it's something that if you do a search for recommendations, it says, unless there's good cause to find otherwise, substantial deference has been given to the plans of the affected communities, to the recommendations of the municipal legislative bodies, etc. And then further down, it talks about municipal recommendations. The commission shall consider the comments and recommendations. So comments are different from recommendations. This is kind of stupid, frankly, but this is where we are.
We have a question. I think.
Thank you for your presentation. So if this were to expire and all of these were to go through Act 250, would you suspect from your in-depth understanding of it, those to be just have a better process with more input, or would you expect most of these to actually be denied and these cell towers not being built, or these wireless infrastructure upgrades not happening? They were going through Act 250.
The statistics from both agencies are that most everything gets approved. There is what I've seen in Act 250 is that there is a better opportunity for changes to be made. At the PUC, if you want to move it, and companies do this, they will move a tower to comply with bylaws. They'll reduce the height to comply with bylaws. Every single one of those is a legal filing, then that's comments on it. At a PDC or an Act 250 hearing, I've seen projects redesigned at the district commission level. And so there's more of an opportunity for collaboration. I'll tell you the biggest problem and my biggest frustration with this topic is that the industry will not negotiate. It's their way. They lock a landowner into a lease and then that's it. And everybody's frustrated that there's no community collaboration. I think if anything positive, aside from a better public process, could come out of moving it to Act 250, it is that there would be a better collaboration. I've heard citizens all over say, we're not opposed to cell towers, but this location, nobody in their right mind would pick. And so why can't we work with them? And they will not work with the communities. They may work with the Department of Public Service in modifying locations, but that never happens on the community level. Will there be denials? If it's a bad project, then there should be a denial, but will there be more denials? I doubt it. I mean, I talked to one district coordinator, said, oh yeah, we used to approve towers all the time.
Good, thanks.
So I want to flag this problems with recommendations, comments, and public comment. I highly recommend you read the appeal because it's very well spelled out there. All right, I've got a series of slides on problems, and then I have a series of slides on suggestions for changing the statute. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I want you to see just how bad this is.
Okay.
All right, problems with
And
the
we have
advanced.
your slides, right?
Right, we have
have
the
these
slides, yeah. And I have to apologize. This is a massive topic. It takes me 2 hours to do one of these webinars with towns. It's way too complicated. All right. You have set up this statute so that the obligation is on the town boards to initiate. They don't understand. They have no idea what they're doing. Your chair of your Senate Appropriations Committee is from Marshfield. And I'm sure you all know John Groveman from the NRC. He's from Marshfield. Their planning commission said, we don't have any role to play in this. I mean, this is not an unsophisticated town, but that's what their planning commission wouldn't even talk about it. Now, it's sometimes planning commissioners take lead, sometimes select boards take lead, but until I am brought into a town with the citizens telling them you need to hear from the net, they don't know what their role is. I explain to the planning commission, you go through your plan. Does it comply or doesn't it? The select board can look at other issues too. Sometimes select boards and planning commissions can take different positions, but they don't understand. Well, the state of Massachusetts is doing a change in their citing. And what do you know? I just got this the other day, but they have pre-filing requirements that are 60 days, and it's on the applicant to initiate and to do an advertisement, which we don't do. And so there are all these things spelled out that makes perfect sense. We could change the statute to this, and that there has to be, notices, and they have to hold a public-facing pre-filing information session, meet with the municipal. Right now, that only happens if the towns ask for it, and they don't even know they have to ask. All right, problems with the advance notice. The towns and the public do not understand the purpose of the phase at all. Public comments in the advance notice are directed to the applicant. People want to write their comments to the PUC. I have to say, no, this is the time you tell the applicant. The PUC doesn't care about what happens. But the public doesn't know that. Nobody knows the PUC isn't paying any attention because there's an EPUC case. They think this is part of the PUC. Citizens have to ask the boards to put the proposed towers on the agenda, the town boards members, and I've heard this over and over, ain't nothing we can do, it's up to the PUC. Sometimes the leasing landowners are serving on the select boards, and the friends and family of the tower leasing landowners are on the board, so the towns stay out of it. Other times I've seen that the leasing landowners are kind of intimidating, bully type, and the towns, these are, towns of 400 people, very small town dynamics, the towns will stay silent. There are a lot of reasons why towns don't get involved in these cases. Problems with the petition in the 30-day period after completeness. Public comments to the PUC. Okay, so if people have really done a lot, and some people do, they get petitions going, they get a lot of public comments on the advance notice phase. And then I say, oh, well, those don't count. PUC doesn't look at those. You have to do it all over again. Verizon has been having a pattern of doing an advance notice and letting it expire. They expire in 180 days. And there can be a lot of activity on the local level, and then it expires. And then it's like everybody's steam is gone and there's no activity. And then the petition is filed. And so this is this repetitive process. Who can intervene? Well, good question. People don't understand who can intervene. There's a notice of intervention form and a motion to intervene form. Okay, here's your notice of intervention form. You get to read 4 pages, 2 pages, and it's pretty simple. It is you check a box. You don't even have to sign it. You can just print the name. But you only do more if it's section 248 and 248J. What's that? I noticed there's a case going on right now in Waterville, and a petition was filed and nobody contacted me. And I noticed that people filed a notice of intervention form, not understanding that was the wrong form. And then they didn't know what to put on the motion to intervene form. So it's an interesting example of what happens when people don't get my guidance. But this form is confusing because adjoining landowners can use it for 248 and 248J cases and net metering cases. All right, so the motion to intervene form, this one has 4 pages of instructions, 3 pages of instructions. Then it starts out, it has 4 boxes, intervention as of right. It says this is uncommon, leave blank if not applicable. Well, why do they put that at the beginning? And in one, you identify the statute, in the other, you identify your interest. I've never met anybody who can fill this out, but citizens do it because they don't understand. So then on the back, permissive intervention by statute or rule, or without statute or commission rule. How do you fill out this form? Does this make sense to you? Well, okay, I guess if you know the statute, numbers, you can put it in there, but if you don't, you don't. Okay. So which box to use, what to put on the form, and what you have to request a hearing by day 30. It's public hearing, right? In Enosburg, you got a comment that I recommend you read from Philippa Dorfman. I was working
yesterday.
I was working with Philippa on the first round of the Enosburg Tower case. And at one point she said, when do we get to be heard? And that really struck me because I had not had any of the neighbors put in lay witness testimony. They were focusing on trying to do expert witness testimony. There's no time when the citizens get to be heard. They're completely silenced. How do you request a hearing? There's no site visit. There's no public hearing. There's no balloon test required. In Ira and in Enosburg, the citizens said, wait, we didn't see a balloon test. Can you put up a balloon? And the PUC wouldn't require it because the landowner said no. So they couldn't have their own aesthetics expert evaluate where the power would even be, because all they had to go on was the pictures provided by the applicant. The interveners must learn the PUC section 48A procedures, rules of practice, how to use EPUC, and all the petition documents, all in this same time period. So let's see, we have the PUC's website where you can get to their rules. You have to go to their rules of practice. How many pages is that? Yeah, you're supposed to be familiar with all these in order to intervene. That's 67 pages. EPUC itself, I remember Senator Harvey, you asked about, could we get a briefing on how to use EPUC? You don't have time for it, but yeah, there's a drop-down menu. There are all these tabs. You have to learn how to file things. You have to create an account. If you're going to actually participate, you have to add a person. If you're going to read the testimony, you have to add a person, and then you have to add a witness before you can file the testimony. I file almost everything for people that I work with because it's just too complicated to try and train anybody. Then we have the Public Service Department's guide to participating, and they have a section in here that's completely wrong on applicability to local zoning. And I've told Jim Porter about it, and they haven't fixed it. But then you have the PUC's guidance document. Well, it starts out with de minimis. So then we get down to the actual project. And it talks about the evidentiary hearing, but it doesn't mention there's a proposal for decision after the briefs, and then you comment on the proposal for decision. So it's not exactly complete, but I did get the PUC to fix their guidance documents. All right, back to yeah. Are we having fun yet as a citizen with a tower proposed 500 feet from your house who's thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have to move. And now I have to learn all of this. What's a petition? Most people call it an application. And then the towns and the RPCs that might have a small board that meets once a month. And if they got the applicant a petition after their monthly meeting, oh, but they have only 30 days to get the recommendations in. Do zoning bylaws and ordinance apply? I have run into several towns where the planning commissioners have been on for a while, and they say, oh, they don't count. Verizon told that to a public meeting in Manchester, and they continue to file it. And you changed the law in 2016 so that bylaws do count. But the people who've been in these places for a long time, they remember, and they're absolutely adamant. The chair of the planning commission in Westmont, adamant. No, our bylaws don't matter. All right, problems with PUC section 248A after the day 30. The applicant will oppose every person who moves to intervene. The department will support limited intervention. Neighbors only get standing on aesthetics. So they might get standing on the town plan, but if the town intervenes, then they don't even get standing on that. And then the PUC has added the societal benefit that can overrule an undue adverse aesthetic effect. Citizens once.
The PUC added that, or that staff?
No, the PUC added that, and I actually did a deep dive into the history of societal benefit, and they just added.
And what about aesthetics? Is that defined in statute, or is that?
Aesthetics is fairly well understood. I can't answer the question. I'm not a lawyer. I can't answer the question whether unless it's defined in statute, but there will be an
Aesthetics
undue
is
adverse aesthetics effect. And aesthetics goes way beyond just the view. It's the characters,
We're
neighborhood.
gonna have to move this.
I know.
along.
So citizens want standing on coverage. If the town doesn't engage, why can't the citizens
Okay,
weigh in on coverage?
and that it might be more helpful to us, because we're not a town. Or if you could help us with suggestions for what would work.
Okay, so you have this.
Yeah.
I'd like
we
you
have
to keep
this
to
read
incorporate into your thinking, because I'm just telling you like it is.
Mhm.
And there's all kinds of issues. They keep coming up. Any idea that the timeframes? Oh, let's just take a look at the
I
timeframes
think we're going to look at the time frame.
right here. All right. So on this map with the
I think everybody would welcome
okay,
some more time frames.
current active contested cases. These cases that are active right now, 517 days, 423 days, 247 days, 200. Do you think there's benefit to the public to have these things dragging out this? It's not the public that's dragging them out. It's often the way the developers are behaving. People don't want to give up years of their lives to this. All right, we got to after the scheduling hearing, after the evidentiary hearing, you can read that on your own. Suggestions for changes. So I'm suggesting changing, this is to change the statute, advance notice process, and the recommendations and responses to recommendations in good cause suggested changes in statute for, they need to have a drop-down menu for recommendations so that the recommendations are identified as recommendations and are not just filed as public comment. Procedures, they need to change their procedure document so that it actually makes a clear differentiation between a comment, a public comment, and a recommendation. And then those are suggestions for the language to use.
Okay.
Suggestions to changes to public participation process. And this is about what happens if we would like to see this issue of the town recommendation dealt with first, before the neighbors have to go through every, bit of, and for the towns too, have to file on every other issue. Could we get a determination if a town recommends, no, we get substantial deference, this doesn't comply with our plan? Can that just be the end of it? Or does it have to go through the whole process? We'd like to see the end of it if, and I think that the PUC has been open to this, but it's the applicants want this to go through the whole process. We want to see a site visit, a balloon test, and a public hearing. There has been one site visit with a balloon test. There was one in Granville, so it can't happen, but the PUC doesn't conduct public hearings. That's not right. They need to go in
No,
here.
I think we heard today that the time frame we've given them in law makes that virtually impossible.
Well, it needs to happen.
We can look at that.
And I am reflecting to you what I'm hearing in community after community. The balloon test they do, they use a 3-foot party balloon for a tower that's going to be 10 feet across. That's another big issue. Seriously, I mean, we had a drone operator who said, I can't believe I was worried about getting my drone caught in a party balloon. He thought it was going to be it's just ridiculous. And then it completely minimizes the visibility because of what the tower would be like, because you've got this dinky little balloon. In lieu of discovery, parties shall exchange a list of witnesses, summary of testimony, expert reports, and then you have an evidentiary hearing with direct testimony like they do in Act 250. And then the PUC hearing officer can request further information, just like the district commission does for a recess order. And then they can submit findings of facts and conclusions of law, and you can have your proposal for decision and comments and all that. This is what I like to see. Sunset section 248A, site towers and antennas through Act 250, add the substantial deference language regarding town plan and telecommunications bylaws and ordinance to Act 250, regulate small cell antennas through Act 250 with additional state statute or municipal bylaw ordinances and no municipal permit required. Let's do away with the municipal permit, have it all go through Act 250, simplify the process, make it so people can be heard. And then if it is appealed, it goes to the environmental division where there is a pro se assistance, because right now there is no help for the citizens.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so you have multiple pages of suggestions, but this page seems to, I hate to use this word, but trump the other pages, because if we're sunsetting the 248A process, if we did go along with that suggestion, all of your suggestions for how to change the 248A process would become moot.
Because you really would like to have it go to Act.
And I will say the same
Ultimately,
thing
you
is
would like
true
it,
with
yes.
section 248. It is a nightmare. And land use does not belong at the Public Utility Commission. Vermont's the only state that does land use through our PUC. We need to move these things to Act 250. It's our land use law. It's a great opportunity and I will say there's a lot of bashing of Act 250 going on. I'm a big champion of Act 250. It was brilliant how it was put together with these regional commissions because it bypasses the small town. I call it the friends and family kind of permitting that goes on. I did a research in news stories from 1969. They considered municipal statewide zoning. And they said that that's where the developers' friends are on these DRBs. And so by making it into a regional process, it creates an element that makes it so that you don't have this. I mean, and I'm not throwing stones. It is natural when you have small towns that there are going to be conflicts of interest. Mm-hmm. And so they really were very smart in how they put it together. And the best thing about Act 250 is the district commission process, and we really need to take advantage of this opportunity with fewer cases going through district commissions because of Act 181 to use that capacity in ways that the PUC doesn't need to be doing these things either.
181 is yet to be seen how many decisions.
I know, and I'm following it closely.
Okay.
These last three slides are just to give you an example. This is 467 feet from a couple who are in their 80s. Been in town for more than 50 years. Wonderful people. Nobody wants to see this happen to them. Marshfield. And actually, the closest house is the leasing landowner, but he doesn't live there. It's a rental. I've got more of these, but I just put three of them in. This is the AT&T tower affecting this house is up on a hill with the most gorgeous views. I visited there in November and it was very upsetting to see what's happening to this family with young children who are exactly the kind of people you want to be inviting to Vermont to work here. And they submitted comments, Tanya and Jesse Hart in the House side. You should read their comments if they haven't submitted to you. They said they cannot encourage anyone to move to Vermont based on the experiences they've had with this. And I'm seeing that in a number of cases in Washington. There was a couple who moved here to get away from towers, and they left the state because of the tower proposed there. So thank you for hearing me.
Just eliminating the Act 248 process and going to Act 250 only, what will that mean to the amount of time it takes to get a project completed?
It might be faster based on what I've been seeing about the the timeframes from the reports. I've looked at the PUCS report and Act 50 report. I've looked at the timeframes. And I think they get the Act 50 gets things through much faster than the PUC.
Hello, this is Chris.
Okay, thank you. This is a lot to digest.
I'm also, in what I've given you, I have given you a page of links.
Yes, I thought.
And that page of links goes to some of the things that I've shown you here. It also goes to the 3 reports to the legislature, the litigation that ITW has done over they've sued the PUC 3 times over the shot clock, and then they went to court over Enosburg and the Westmore appeal. And then my testimony from 2023, 2026, and 2020, and the 2023 testimony or 2026 testimony in the House has the Telecommunications Act language, if you want to take a look at it. And then it also contains links to all the videos that we did in 2023.
Okay.
The discussion that we had then, if you want to refresh your mind, and why I do not want to be back here in 3 or 4 years doing this again. So thank you very much.
Okay.
So much fun.
That is the last thing it is. I will close by saying I will work with anyone who wants to work with me. I have done my best work through stakeholder processes. I am not a hater, and I hate towers. Can I say that any more clearly? I know, I've had it. I don't know what everybody says, oh, we don't know what we do without you in that. Well, I'm sorry, I can't keep leading people into a process that is just gonna destroy their lives. And they're not gonna win anyway. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. Committee, we're gonna take a break until 10 of, and then I would like to come back and vote out at 7:33 and act relating to